Well, as the government marks 3 years in part this week, tonight we begin a series of debates starting with the state of the economy. One of the key reforms is the Goods and Services Tax, or the GST, which will create a uniform tax structure on goods throughout the country. And as the government gets ready to roll out the GST on the 1st of July, the new tax slabs have had a mixed reaction from different industries. The film industry, for instance, is unhappy today to be part of the highest tax bracket of 28%. Producers issued a statement saying that it would hurt business. Well, joining us, all right, I don't know what's going on. My producer is saying that a story is supposed to play out. I don't think it is, so apologies for that. But let me go straight across to the panel instead. We have Kiran Majumdar-Shaw joining us on the program, and Mohan Guruswamy, the Centre for Policy Alternatives Chairman, also joining us. Sadanand Dhume continues to stay with us, so does Sachin Pilot, and GVL Rao of the BJP is with us as well. Kiran Shaw, to you first. The numbers overall, when you look at them, seem to be pretty good for India in terms of the GDP growth and inflation, and the rupee is stronger today. What's your overall impression of where we're headed?
I think basically if you look at the economy, it's in good health. I think the GST rollout is certainly something that has been welcomed by most sectors. I think from the healthcare sector, in terms of healthcare services, it is exempt from GST. So I think that's a very welcome bit of news. From the pharma sector's point of view, I think most of the slabs are fairly acceptable, except that I wish life-saving drugs were also exempt from GST. But on a sort of a general comment, I would say that this government has done fairly well over the last 3 years, because we have seen the genesis of a very, very strong and evolving digital economy. I think we have seen a good, startup frenzy in the country, because that's good for job creation in the long term. I think we've seen some good focus on renewable energy.
Okay. So overall,
and I think we've also seen some good.
Overall, you
sound optimistic, yeah. But I think the one area which I want the government to focus on is job creation, because we are a bit concerned about the 7% GDP growth and only 1% job growth. So I think that's an area where we really need to focus and make sure that we are looking at job creation, because we've got 850 million young people below the age of 35.
Absolutely. And I think
10 million people coming into the job market.
I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for the government.
So we've got to focus on that.
And as you said, it's probably going to be the biggest challenge for the government in the next couple of years that it has. But Mohan Guruswamy, if you look at the overall health of the economy, you were extremely critical of the note ban when it happened. Do you think that we haven't really yet got to the crux of the economic impact of the note ban yet, that it's something that is going to take some time to really understand?
The note ban cost us about 1.5% of GDP. That's Kaushik Basu's figure. I think it's a little more than that. And that money has gone. It was an act of vandalism, but didn't serve any purpose. It didn't get you any revenues, nothing. It was just, I don't know why it was done in that manner. It was done. We've had currency swap changes before. We've had currency transfers before, but never in this kind of a ham-handed way. But let me get back to the previous speaker. He was talking about GDP growth, and he was so optimistic and positive about it. When the Manmohan Singh government left power, we were all despondent in this country, because growth had come down to 4.8, 4.9%. And then the first act of this new government in 2014 was to tweak the method of GDP calculation by adding 2.2% to it. So you're running with an icing of 2.2 to your GDP. So today if you're doing 7, you're actually doing 4.8. So how are we better? Because GDP has to be in relation to something else. And this 1% job is also a bogey. Last year, this government actually created 2.1 lakh jobs in the organized sector. So what are these people talking about? You got jobless growth, and you expect people to believe that you can have growth without investment, without additional savings, without curb on government expenditures, without transferring subsidies to investment, you know, and this is all kind of hogwash. This is kind of voodoo economics of the worst kind.
Well, those are pretty strong words. So you're saying you don't believe those numbers? You don't believe the numbers that have been put out?
I don't believe anything.
Oh, all right. Well, Mr. GVL Rao, you just heard that very sharp criticism from Mr. Mohan Guruswamy on that. He's called these voodoo numbers. This is jobless growth, that you tweak the method of GDP calculation, so there's really nothing to compare it to. Quite a lot of criticism, and he's called demonetization an act of vandalism that achieved nothing.
No, Nidhi, there are many pessimists and there are many cynics. And certainly the overall positivity that you see in the country today clearly reflects a good economy, a public assessment of a good economy. You never feel good when economy is doing bad. So I think cynics might criticize it, but the reality is even the new work numbers, even if one were to rework the numbers of 2013, FY 2013 as per the rework numbers would still work out to only 5.6% GDP growth, which compared to that. Today in FY 16 we grew at 7.9%. That's an increase of almost that's an increase of over 2 percentage points. And with GST now being rolled out, both inflation is also going to go down and the overall GDP growth is going to go up by another 2 percentage points. This is what economists and experts are saying. This is not my own calculation. But you look at economy in an overall context.
Also.
When we can I just finish? When we were handed over the reins of power, the entire economy was in doldrums. It was in a mess. It was a ruined economy. 8%. How do you look? You can't look at growth in isolation. If you look at inflation, in the first 4 months of 2014, the CPI was over 8 percentage points. And it was in double digits for a considerable period of
Mr.
UPA to tenure.
In terms
Today,
of the numbers that the
for the
government
last
has put
3
out,
years,
you're right. Things, especially on inflation, the rupee,
no,
the GDP
these are not government
numbers,
numbers. These are numbers.
All of them look, they look pretty good. But on the issue of job creation, which is the...
They are good. They don't look good. They are good.
Okay,
that's why people of the country
are good,
are
as you
appreciating
say.
It.
But
and
as Kiran Majumdar Shaw pointed out just now, she's very optimistic and upbeat about the economy overall, but she's concerned about job creation, and that is just not enough. And would you acknowledge that this is going to be your biggest challenge, that there was a big promise that had been made when Mr. Modi came to power 3 years ago about jobs being created on a large scale every year, and that has not happened?
No, you have to look at jobs in its entirety. You look at my manifesto. What does it talk about? It talks about employment and entrepreneurship together. And look at the entrepreneurial sector. Look at self-employment. Under Mudra Yojana alone, nearly 7.5 crore people have been given financial assistance, have been given, have been provided with institutional finance. That's a huge number. There is Startup India, there is Stand Up India. You look at all of them together, the entire ecosystem one has to look at, and not look at only organized sector employment. Number one, let me also tell Mr. Guruswamy, entire UPA 1, when the overall economic growth was high, I think it was a zero growth employment. I think don't present facts in a very convenient and a twisted manner.
I am not holding a brief for the UPA. How are you different from the UPA?
Growth.
That
this
is
was
my question.
stated by none other than Rangarajan. Rangarajan, who was the Prime Minister's economic advisor.
You know, Sachin Pilot, you know, on this issue of the state of the economy, do you tend, as the opposition, only to look at things, you know, through a negative prism? Because there are important indicators which are actually far better than how the rest of the world is doing. Although, yes, there are concerns about employment and about investment.
You know, there are 2-3 points I want to make very quickly, Nidhi. One is that when this new government came into power, the price of oil fell from $150 a barrel to about $50 a barrel. That was a huge benefit because 83% of our oil is what we import. Huge benefit for the new government that came in. Now, you know, I believe in numbers, but I believe more in talking to people. I travel around the state. I meet people from towns, cities, urban, rural areas. Now, one thing, real estate prices down. I've not met a single businessman who says my business is expanded, sales are down, agriculture growth is down. So this sense of feeling good, I think, is only there in books, because when you talk about the economy at large, you talk to a mom and pop shop, a kirana store fellow, or a small industrialist or a small entrepreneur. Everyone is struggling. There's lack of credit, there's liquidity crunch, there's less savings. Now the numbers, as somebody else said, is like 2.2% added because you change the way you calculate GDP. But manufacturing, exports, it's true that China has also slowed down, so obviously some of the global investments has come into India. That's a positive for us. But have we harnessed the whole issue of job creation? There are 36 deaths a day today, farmer suicide. It was 12,000 in 2015. It's 14,000 in 2016. The farmer agricultural distress is upon us. We haven't done anything to resolve that. 3 years have gone since the new government came into power. Now, I'm not looking at it from a negative prism. I wish the government all the best. This is my country too. I want the economy to grow. But 3 years is a long time for them to reflect on their own actions. How long will the BJP keep saying in UPA 1, in UPA 2, "Arey, humne jo kiya tha," people have said, fine, you've given you a chance. What have you done in the last 3 years besides these dramatic issues of banning the note and then saying we'll kill black money and Naxalism and terrorism?
Yeah,
that
so
hasn't
the
happened.
jury is still out on demonetization, so I think the government will argue politically it has paid off for them, and it has. Sadanand, you've been watching the government's economic sort of story closely for 3 years. Where do you objectively stand on this?
Let me make 3 quick points. The first is that the government does deserve credit for some things.
Yeah.
GST is a genuine achievement. FDI has increased.
Yeah.
The macroeconomic numbers, including inflation, including the central budget deficit, look good.
Yeah.
Give them credit there. The second is that there is no question that this government has not been as reformist as people had hoped. Mr. Modi has trusted the bureaucracy much more than he's trusted the market. I don't mean it in the sense of the stock market. I mean it in the sense of allowing an economy to take its own course. Jobs are not being created. The BJP had promised that it would end tax terror. Instead, it has doubled down on tax terror. Demonetization, I agree with Mr. Guruswamy, who's probably one of the single most harebrained economic ideas in the economic history of this country. So there have been several misses also. And all in all, those of us who believed that Mr. Modi was coming in to continue the legacy of Mr. Vajpayee, who was one of India's great reformist prime ministers, have reason to be disappointed.